Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's seminar. I hope you all have been enjoying summer so far. Just a quick note that we'll take a pause during the month of August and we'll reconvene with our seminar series in September. So for today's seminar, we have exciting topic, Dr. Dominic Nathan. He's going to be talking about clinical trials and BRICS. But before we delve into the details, I just wanted to go over the logistics with you all. Dominic, can we go to the next slide, please? As always, we request you all to keep your microphones muted to avoid any static sound. If you have any questions, you can post it in the chat window. We will be monitoring that throughout the seminar and answering as we go. After each presentation, we'll also save some time for questions and answers. So please feel free to unmute at that time and ask your questions. As always, we will be recording the seminar and we'll be posting on the BRICS website at the URL that we have on the screen. Can we go to the next slide, Dominic? For today's agenda, we have a couple of topics. Dr. Matthew McAuliffe is going to open up with providing the broad overview on the BRICS platform, and he'll hand it off to Dr. Dominic Nathan to talk about the clinical trials, and we'll close with Dr. McAuliffe's remarks. So with this, Matt, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Great. Thanks, Preeti. Good morning, everyone. As usual, I just tried to give just a really quick overview. I know sometimes we have some new people here who join the group. I just want to provide a little context before handing it off to Dr. Nathan. And if we want to go ahead and go to the next slide, that'd be great. So we've been building the BRICS framework or platform for probably over a decade now, probably closer to 15 years. And as we built this platform that can be deployed in a number of different ways, we've taken in ideas in collaborations with groups that we've worked with, the DoD, as well as other institutes, as well as a lot of working groups, in making sure that we implement the kind of functionality that the users need and to use standards that are often identified here at NIH. For one example, we use the common data elements and use those common data elements as they're defined at NLM, and then try to format those data elements that are consistent with NLM as just one simple example. We have a number of different instances. Here's a partial list of those instances of BRICS. So we can deploy the instances of BRICS in different ways. One is FITBR. That was, again, a strong collaboration that we've had with the DoD and NINDS in developing a platform to support traumatic brain injury. Another instance of Parkinson's disease. We have a very new instance with NICHD, Child Health. The DASH will be supporting their data in a BRICS platform going forward. That'll come out this fall, early fall. And a number of other instances. Another important instance that we have with the NINDS is CSTAR that supports the clinical trials, and you'll hear more about that from Dominic, as well as CASA, which is another DoD instance. Okay, so the neat idea here is build one platform, get it, implement all the security functionality that needs to be there, as well as the functionality that users need, and be able to deploy it in different ways, both on the cloud or on-prem as needed. Okay, next slide. We can go ahead because I think Dominic's going to talk about this, but the big idea is clinical research supports. We support all the different processes within clinical research, going all the way from collecting consistent data using common data elements and having a standard data dictionary based on common data elements, supporting the capture of that data, and then being able to assign unique IDs to that data, and so on. Okay, next slide. So this one's just to show kind of the major functionality, but I think the important thing that you'll see is that we implement standards and support standards within the system. FHIR, UMLS, we built a UMLS tool in collaboration with NLM to help generate UMLS concepts, CUIs, concept unique IDs for those data elements. And permissible values of those data elements. We have a PPRL system, privacy preserving record linkage system called the GUID that is also consistent with NDA. Our electronic data capture tool is 21 CFR Part 11 compliant. We're FISMA moderate secured, and that we're 853 Rev 5, which is the latest version of the NIST 853 spec. We routinely work with CIT, the rest of CIT, in making sure that we have nightly testing of the system and ensure that we are updating our libraries appropriately to make sure that we maintain a effective security posture. Okay, lots of other functionality. I'm not going to go into detail here. Next slide, because I want to hand this off to Dr. Dominic Nathan here. Dominic and I have been working, and our teams have been working together for probably close to a decade, probably 7 or 8 years. Dr. Dominic Nathan currently serves as the Bioinformatics Director for the Military Traumatic Brain Injury Initiative. Dominic manages the interagency collaborative research information systems and resources to support the DoD and NIH research clinical trials in various repositories. He has developed informatics infrastructure and tools and in an accelerated timeline to meet critical needs. Dr. Nathan completed postdoctoral training at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, and the NIH. Dr. Nathan is an adjunct professor at USIS and a research collaborator at NIH. His past experience includes developing and managing an expertise IT program for a Fortune 500 company and managing a stroke research lab at the VA. Dr. Nathan serves on several national and international biomedical engineering advisory committees and is a research officer in the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps. Dr. Nathan's research interests are in advancing translational clinical research and its applications. All right. That's all. I'm going to hand it off to you, Dominic. It's all yours.
Thank you, Dr. McAuliffe, for the opportunity and for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. Before I start, I'm going to turn my camera off. I'll come back on later for questions so as to not distract. I don't have any conflicts of interest, and anything I say is my opinion. Don't blame the government or any other group. It's all me. There are two flavors of clinical research. The first are observational studies, in which the goal is to collect data and just monitor people or patients in whatever context or situation they're in. The second type of clinical research is a clinical trial, and the objective of a clinical trial is to test an intervention in human subjects. This intervention can be a new device, a new therapy, a new drug, a procedure, or a process that has some impact on the care or the treatment of a human subject. Typically, clinical trials consist of 4 phases, and these are based on the sample size. And the goal of each phase is really to determine the efficacy of the treatment, the safety, any side effects, and dosage parameters. In addition, an FDA review at phase 3 would provide an approval for the experimental drug or device to be used in human subjects. However, the landscape of clinical trials is evolving, and it is evolving rapidly. There are 2 key areas. The first is data types. So there are lots of data now. Once electronic data collection tools were incorporated in research almost 25 years ago, that has opened up the ability to collect a wide range of data. So everything now lives in a digital platform or in a digital world. Second of all, the sources of data have started to increase rapidly. So no longer are we collecting a single source, but now there is a lot of multimodal or different combinations of analysis. So we have surveys, wearable devices, biomarkers, imaging, clinical data. There's also been a rapid change in data processes, specifically how studies are managed. So things such as reporting, monitoring, oversight, sponsor reviews, and then the regulatory compliance requirements have been increasing steadily. In addition, the requirements to manage subjects such as consenting, enrollment, adverse event reporting, protocol compliances, the requirements to provide those kinds of reports have also increased. And data management processes such as collection, curation, the tracking of data changes and auditing, and those requirements have also increased. More importantly, there has also been a shift in the data lifespan. So no longer is data just living within the confines of the original study. A lot of funding agencies and even journals now are increasingly mandating the sharing of data. Therefore, data has to live somewhere in a repository that's accessible for secondary analysis. And with that, there is a large adoption of data curation standards, and FAIR, which is findable, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability, is one of the most common standards used. So this brings us to our pain points currently at the NIH. At present, a unified solution or standards are absent for clinical research. And this is very important. Draw the distinction between clinical informatics and clinical research informatics. Those are two completely different items. Clinical informatics is used for patient care, whereas clinical research informatics is used for research. You cannot really use one tool for the other because those are two completely separate uses, completely separate applications, and there's a completely separate set of rules. Compliant digital capabilities to manage research PII and PHI is also absent. So every single IC lab or department would have their own system. And if you look at one IC, you might have, anywhere from 10 to 20 different disparate systems. And this is a problem because the siloed systems each come with a cost. You have to pay a licensing fee. There's also a fee for underlying infrastructure, compliance, security. And as all of us know, the security and compliance landscape is also evolving rapidly. And CIT has taken a lead on several key initiatives this year, but those also add to the cost of labor and financial burden. There's a very high dependency currently on manual processes such as master list management, subject de-identification, randomization processes, QA/QC. And the problem about the manual process is a lot of the information lives on individual people's computers or on a shared drive. And that's actually very poor for continuity because if someone were to leave or retire, then we lose information. Number 5 is there's variable data collection and management practices. And this is problematic too, because oftentimes everyone does things their own way and it's non-conforming to existing standards. And this is difficult if you have a multi-year study to reconcile data or even to QA/QC data. And then all of these things lead to a high level of effort. So financial cost is one thing, but also the number of personnel needed to make sure every system is in compliance. Data from one system is able to be matched correctly and being able to be curated properly. That is so time consuming. And it's also very difficult to meet government sharing requirements. And lastly, all of these things lead to low return on investment, poor sustainability, and loss of data and continuity. So what do we actually need? There are two broad there are two broad requirements. The first is in terms of the technology stack or the informatics system. And what we need is electronic data capture capabilities. A lot of emphasis is placed on electronic data capture. But it's not just electronic data capture that drives your clinical trial. You also have regulatory compliance, a document repository, because during the course of your study, there are training documents, licenses, study documents that you have to maintain. If there are changes to a protocol, you would change your consent forms, data management practices. So who accesses the data, importing, exporting capabilities. We also have to manage our study teams. We do have individuals that are on the study longer. Some individuals, such as our postbacks, postdocs, they might rotate off after a summer or a few months. We have to manage what they can see, what they can analyze, collect. We also, if we're doing a clinical trial, we'll be interfacing with the pharmacy. So we have to be able to send information. And then the most important thing really is patient management. We need to be able to schedule subjects. If we're doing a randomized control trial, we have to be able to blind and unblind and then randomize the subjects. And all of this also has to live somewhere. So we need compliant infrastructure that can collect PII, PHI data, and also ensure that the necessary compliances are in place to hold the data. And that infrastructure doesn't work in a vacuum. So we have a pretty large support team. We need network engineers, we need system administrators, we need developers. And lastly, we also need a clinical trials management system to be able to manage FDA documentation, IRB reviews, data safety monitoring board reports. And the most important piece coming towards the end is the ability to do analytics with the data that we have. And then the second driver is really the processes. So now that we have our infrastructure, we need processes, and the processes should not be an afterthought, but it should really be part of the workflow and part of the system. So, things such as protocol design, IRB documents, consent forms, um, data management plan, statistical management plan. How do we collect data, analyze our data, and then trainings? Where do we keep all of these items? So a lot of these things now are being performed, but a lot of them are being done in a separate system, or they're being done external to the informatics systems that are needed. So really, if we go back to the first slide, these are the informatics systems. They drive a lot of the functionality in the trial. And then these are the processes that really should be inbuilt. So what we are trying to do is really have a unified system that takes into account the necessary processes while accounting for or integrating that into the technology piece. So what are some options that are available? If we think about capabilities and features, in our ideal situation, pie in the sky, we want, high features, high capabilities, so we'll be on the upper top left. And then the burden to implement, to maintain, and the costs, for example, infrastructure costs, licensing costs. Ideally, we want this to be as low as possible here. So this is really the ideal solution, is something to the top left. So what options do we have? We have commercial systems, and commercial systems are quick. Out the box, something works. You can get a really nice platform. Many of these systems are accessible and they're mature. So a vendor has spent years building them, and they can provide a very quick turnaround to set something up. And a lot of the big vendors also have very good customer support, and they're diverse resources. So a vendor can provide, data manager, application engineer on call right away. The disadvantage about the commercial systems are they are very expensive, and some of them are limited in terms of compliance. And nowadays, a lot of the vendors prefer you to use their platform. They're providing a platform as a service. So the data and the collection and the software lives on their systems or on their cloud system. And the problem about that is, there's a question about data ownership and control and loss of data, because as all of us know, research funding ebbs and flows. So in a good year, we might have enough funding, but when funding gets reduced, the vendor is not obligated to hold your data set. And that is problematic. There's also issues about changes, or if I have 10 studies and I have the same feature, a lot of times I am charged a la carte per feature per study, and the cost snowballs very rapidly. Third thing is, when you get into an agreement, not a lot of vendors will sign a firm fixed price contract. And this is problematic also if you have a 5-year, 10-year study. There's nothing to stop the prices of the platform from increasing in year 4 or year 5 or year 6. What is the other alternative? Well, we have free systems. So there are a lot of low cost, almost free systems. The free systems, you can go on the internet, download it, implement it right away. Okay, there's opportunities for flexibility. Every free system has a different implementation. So one example is RedCap. Everybody can get RedCap, it's free, but RedCap out the box isn't compliant for PII, PHI, and clinical trials collection. Each instance, each institute, each university, their rate cap is different. And the cost of bringing a free solution to full compliance is it's very, very expensive. Also, you have to have a very strong team to be able to continuously update the infrastructure and also the platform. And lastly, data harmonization quality cannot be guaranteed because all of these free systems are not really centralized, and every implementation, even within one institute, you could have two instances of a low cost solution completely different. It makes data harmonization a complete nightmare. So what are some of the risks? Well, if we have multiple siloed systems or a system that doesn't live within a government enclave, then it increases our security and compliance risk. It also increases data management efforts. And if we have multiple systems and a lot of them are not conforming to a particular standard, then harmonizing data is also very challenging, and it increases risk for error. The problem about these are knowledge retention drops because, again, if there's a funding cut, you lose a contract. If the vendor goes defunct, in my almost 20 years of doing this, there were several vendors that had gotten $1 million contracts and then they went bankrupt or disappeared. And this is bad for our operations and our research. But the biggest driving factor really is money. In our environment of austere funding, we have to work within the constraints that we're given, and funding is a very, very big rate limiter. The other rate limiter are resources, because assumingly we have unlimited funding and we have gotten all this nice systems. However, there are only so many hours and so many personnel that we can utilize. And a lot of us are here really. The central mission of the NIH is not to build IT infrastructure. It is to do research to drive medical care. So we have to balance our financial obligations and our resources. And the emphasis isn't so much on building the platform, but really, how do we get to do clinical research in the most effective, efficient, and compliant manner that's sustainable? And this is where we look at, can we come up with a central NIH solution that gives us a high amount of features, a high amount of capabilities, yet a low level of burden and financial strain, and it meets our resources and sustainability plan. And it really gives us the option to help clinicians and researchers focus on research. And this is how we came up with BRICS. Well, not me, but the Department of Defense and the NIH met in about 2008, and they said, hey, we found a lot of clinical research, but we're not really seeing a lot of translational products. We're not seeing a lot of return on investment. What can we do? So out of that meeting, two big things came up. One was to develop common data elements or standards for data collection and data curation. And the other was to develop a unified platform. So this is how the NIH BRICS platform was born. And BRICS is essentially a secure, comprehensive electronic data capture system that is online. It can be either on premise or on the cloud, and it provides the ability to collect, store, and share data. There are well-defined and documented data structures that conform to the NIH Common Data Element Guidelines for data collection and harmonization. More importantly, BRICS has inbuilt interoperability. So you can map your data. There's FHIR, OMOP, BMLS, CDISC, and there is a really good number of SMEs on this call that work in these areas. There is an API for more dynamic data analysis, including AI and ML applications. And we have actually tested this on the Google Cloud and also AWS, and I'll talk a little bit more later. And we have extensive role-based permissions and access. BRICS meets regulatory compliance needs for security for FDA clinical trials research, the 21 CFR Part 11, and it has inbuilt subject management capabilities. We can import and host any kind of data. And the most important thing, really, this is a government solution. And why is that important? Because one, we reduce cost. We have reused existing technology and resources. And again, the goal is to really accelerate science. So we're not locked into getting into a service contract. We're not locked into licensing fees. There's no like surprise charges. This is built and managed at the NIH, and it's available as an integrated platform across the NIH. Currently, we have investigators from 8 ICs across the NIH that are using this on various studies. We also have approximately 12 military centers across the country, a couple that are overseas that are using the platform for the infectious disease. And then we have about 13 to 14 civilian collaborators that are using BRICS platforms across multi-site clinical trials. So what is BRICS? Well, it is a set of components. So everybody that gets a BRICS instance, you have the same set of tools. There isn't any extra charge, extra fee. Everybody gets a level playing field. You have full access. It's a set of modules. Each module does something very, very specific. So for example, Proforms. Proforms is the main electronic data collection platform module, and also the main subject scheduling module. The global unique ID, or the GUID tool, that's the PPRL tool for subject de-identification. Our data dictionary provides electronic case report forms for data collection. We have STAMPS, which is used for specimen tracking and management. We also have an extensive imaging tool that can take in any imaging modality, create a really nice searchable package, and then upload it for analysis or for querying. And then we also have a clinical trials management system, our licensing tracking tool called INAT. And all of these are inbuilt into the platform. What we have BRICS is a set of databases, and at the NIH, we are integrated with BTRIS. So BTRIS pulls all the clinical data from CRIS into BRICS, and we are able to query things such as labs, patient encounters, pathology reports, even demographics, consent information, any of that. We can get it from BTRIS in real time. We can also connect to PQS, which is the ProTrack query system, and we do use that for our studies to get an idea of consulting, consenting, enrollment numbers, study status, any of the study staff that are on it. We're able to pull this information into our BRICS instance right now. And the beauty of this is having these capabilities. We were able to do this also outside. So at the DoD, we are in discussions with the DHA to get these capabilities integrated with their electronic medical record system and their IRB system. And since we have this capability, it is flexible to accommodate any of these outside. We also have reporting dashboards that we can build, customize in BRICS. So, for example, we have enrollments, we have study statuses, we have also adverse events information that we can pull in. And we have an API that has been built. And the beauty of this API is it allows you to pull data in any of your other analytics, AI, ML tools. So, Google Cloud, AWS, and we do have an instance on the Amazon AWS cloud. We also have an instance that is going to start up on Google Cloud. We have pulled data into both for analytics. And with the cloud, you don't really stand up a pipeline unless you have a large data flow. You can set out a compute cluster, run your analysis, and then take it down, and then be charged only for the uptime that cluster was up there. So we do have this capability. If anyone's interested, we can definitely help walk you through that. Or if anyone is interested in dashboards or BSI reporting, I'm happy to pull that information too. So this is what it looks like when you log into an instance. You have all the modules, and the first module is the Proforms, where we go for data collection. So data collection happens based on an initial visit. So the PI would say, hey, this is the protocol. In the protocol, we have 3 visits. For each visit, we have our forms. And the reason we have set it up this way is because sometimes visits have a lot of forms. You might have 10 forms or 5 forms. And in the past experience with our older systems, we had people say, oh, the patient has left and we only collected 1 through 8. We forgot to collect forms 9 and 10. Now we cannot go call the patient to come back. So we pre-populate everything so that error is eliminated. And then we also have auto-populated data elements such as medical record number, GUID, date of birth. Any of those can be customized. We have 5 types of data collection methods. You can do direct data entry, and we have actually hardened the system to meet current NIH and federal government requirements. So you do need to have a government credential, a PIF or a CAC card, or you can get a login.gov account. We have patient self-report, where you can send an encrypted link to the subject via email or also SMS to their cell phone, and they can pull up the assessments on their mobile device and complete them. We have our offline collection capabilities using Ostrich. That tool is compliant on iOS, Android, and also Windows machines or mobile devices. We're able to do an anonymous survey, so we can mass survey. We're looking to send this out to 3,000 people to collect how they are responding to a certain condition. And then we can do multi-collect e-form. And multi-collect is used a lot for things such as diary. So if you have a headache diary or a sleep diary and you want to do this daily, this is what the multi-collect form would be used for. Data collection occurs, as I mentioned before, via electronic case report forms. So everything is structured, and there are 2 flavors of e-forms. You have standard forms and then non-standard forms. So standard forms are those that have been validated, that are out there. Some of them are copyrighted. We do work with people who have published, and we do get permissions. And then the non-standard forms, a lot of them are demographic. Some of them are specific assessments to the study. We are able to build those in. We also have the PROMIS library, and PROMIS provides computer adaptive testing. This is based on the healthmeasures.net company, which was actually started at the NIH. Now it's a business out of Northwestern University. As I mentioned earlier, it's not enough just to have technology. We need process. So we have a full workflow for QA/QC. From data verification and validation to individual form locking. And we also have a full audit trail for data collection, any data changes, and we can output data in PDF, CSV, or Excel. We're able to pull data directly from BRICS, and we get consent information, demographics, any clinical data, any assessments, any lab. And as I mentioned before, we have our offline collection capabilities. This is just an example of a case report form. Everything you see here is fully customizable. We can customize the font, the text, the placement of the data elements. And this is the example of the form structure. So every data element is documented, and it has this information. So if I go to one data element, I can see, okay, this is the preferred question text. This is the minimum value is 0, the maximum value is 4. And this is very useful, especially if I'm looking at handing the data to a statistician to do analysis and they get something that's out of range or it's incorrect. They can always go back and double check. Okay, we also have the ability to draw. So for example, we can, if we have the pain form or the MRI screening form, we can draw on it. We have electronic consenting that we use, and we can also collect signatures. You can use a mouse, or if it's a mobile device, use your finger. We can do that. And then we can pull labs in from BRICS. As I mentioned before, we can get different labs. Apologies. We can also pull labs with BRICS. So we can get all the BRICS data, or we can get it from specific date range or specific ranges. And then we can also manage our subjects. So we have a subject profile where we can get demographics information. We also can keep track of contact information, and as needed, any relevant diagnosis information. We're able to also randomize subjects, and I'll elaborate more on that. And we can look at protocol status. So if someone has dropped out, withdrawn, or if their screen failed. We also can manage attachments and look at form completion statuses. And this is particularly useful if you're doing remote data collection. We also have protocol compliance, and then importantly, we have a global unique identifier, which is a type of PPRL, so that we can anonymize the subjects. So we don't need an external master list. We can actually manage everything digitally within the system in real time. So this is how the subject profile looks like. If we are at the NIH, you can put in the medical record number, first name, last name, click get from Beatrice, everything else populates. If you're outside the NIH, then we connect to the other electronic medical record system, and we're able to pull this information in. As I mentioned, we have the inbuilt GUID tool, and this process is really seamless. So once you get your subject profile set up, you can get all the information from the subject info or from Beatrice, and then say generate GUID, and it creates the set of 11 random alphanumeric characters. We also have a subject ID if needed. And then if it's a multi-site, you can specify which site the person is assigned to. And then you have current status, active, withdrawn, inactive. In terms of scheduling the subjects, as I mentioned, you can have active, completed, or withdrawn. And then when you want to randomize the subjects, there are 3 types of randomization. The highly complicated one is by screening. So you can build any screening criteria. It could be age, could be gender, it could be pain threshold. The slightly easier one is automatic assignment. And that is you just have a sequential list and people come in, they just get assigned. And then the third option is manual assignment, where someone would have to go in and manually randomize the subject. In terms of randomization list, you could have really simple lists, which is again, direct sequential, no factors, no changes. You could have a little more complicated one where you could have, several factors, male, female, left hand, right hand, things like that. And if you have a multi-site, this is probably the most complicated one. If you have multi-sites, you could also do factors in those sites. So you don't get, all females on one site, all males on one site. So this is just a randomization example. You can upload the list and everything is available in real time. And this is just an example of randomization eligibility. So all males that are, age or females age 45 with a certain score. And as you randomize the subjects, you can see which groups they're assigned to, and they're randomized. In terms of scheduling, again, this is available in real time. So you can pick the medical record number or subject name, and then the person would show up, pick the date and time. When you click on this, I get a calendar. I can pick, what date and time I want to schedule. And then I can pick my visit type. As I mentioned before, all the CRFs for the specific visit have been predefined, so they're in and they're ready to go. I can either, send an email to the subject, I can send an SMS, or I can copy this link. So this is the encrypted link, put it in my email, and then send it out to my subject. As far as electronic data capture, you have direct data entry. So if I log in, I can pull up my forms, I can enter my data in. This is what it looks like for the patient self-report. I can specify how long the period the forms will be good for. Because if I have, for example, a baseline and a 3-week survey, I don't want them to, complete the 3 weeks before or 3 weeks within the period and it expires. This is the collections table. Everything's available in real time. So the moment you collect your data, you can see if it's locked, in progress, who locked it, what is the lock date. You also have the ability to export. And you can also filter what you're exporting. So if I'm interested in, my subject's IDs, visit date, and which questions, I can pick those. I can also manage my attachments, and I can pick what attachments are associated with my study, and I can download them. And I also have inbuilt regulatory compliance tools. So I have an electronic binder, and this is electronic binder where I can upload important study documents such as, IRB submissions, any licenses, CVs, site training logs, adverse events, things like that. I also have the adverse event log, and we have integrated CTCAE and also MEDRA as a standardized way of reporting adverse events. So for example, if I have a headache, this is the system organ class code, and this is the MEDRA term. And I also have a organized way, instead of saying the headache was painful or very painful, because painful and very painful varies across people. So this way I get a graded response of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And then, as I mentioned, there's full regulatory compliance. So all the data is audited and is tracked, and any operations, any changes before, after, we have that available in real time. Any email notifications, and this is particularly important for questionnaires or studies that have suicidal ideation or self-harm, we're able to track that. And then data downloads, we can see who has downloaded the data sets. We also have inbuilt protocol auditing. So if you have a study monitor that's coming to look at your study or your data, they can go in directly, look at the data, put a comment in, this field is empty. They can save the comment. And then if you have a PI coming in and they see the comment, they can then, respond to it. As I mentioned, we have role-based access controls. We have very, very granular controls. A lot of these were built based on user feedback and request. So we have close to 100 roles that we can customize based on what is needed for the study. This is just an example. So, we have protocol navigator, principal investigator, or auditor. Each one has a different role we can predefine. As I mentioned, we have STAMPS. This is our specimen tracking management system. This system is also fully integrated with BRICS, so we can pull diagnosis, pathology reports, any medications, and we also integrated with Proform, so we get subject demographics, GUIDs, MRNs, so it's all synced. So STAMPS actually helps manage physical freezers. So if you have a freezer and it has the rack with a certain box, we predefine the box size, and we can change the coordinates to match whatever physical freezer or coordinate setup you have. And then we can again predefine the cell types that are used in that specific repository. Blood is by far the most common. We also have cerebrospinal fluid, saliva, urine. And then we can add the diagnoses to the specific repository. We can also add subjects. A lot of these we just pull over from Proforms because they're already in the system. And this is just an example. If we're adding blood, I can pick this spot in there. Say this is blood. This is the protocol. This is the patient. This is the medical record number. And then I have my time as to when it was collected, when it was frozen. The system generates a barcode, and then I can specify how much volume there is. Any diagnosis that I want to have, I can pull a pathology report from Chris if I need to. And then if I'm, distributing my sample out to a different group, or if I'm shipping it out, I can say how much is shipped, and then, my volume would remain. There's again full audit trail. It shows how much was before, and then how much is it after, and then who's the recipient of it. I also can aliquot if needed. We have that inbuilt function, and then it creates aliquots, and each one has a parent. You can see which the parent is. And again, full audit trail to say what has happened to the sample. There's an extensive search and export because some of our repositories are pretty large. We have one repository with almost 500,000 samples, another with about 300,000 and growing. And then we're able to print labels using our label printer. And also, if you have a barcode scanner, we're able to scan barcodes, and then it brings you to the sample right in the system. We also have an extensive ability to pull. As you see here, you can get pretty granular with your search. So everyone with a tumor, with a date, certain age, certain gender, you can pull it up. And we actually also built a brain repository platform in here. This is specific to brain repositories. So we have the case intake form, case history, any grossing information for the samples, any histology reports. We also can track shipments. And we have the next of kin interview, which we have digitized. This is a pretty large log. And then our pathologists have also asked for the ability to, pull up a certain slide and then annotate them, mark them up so that there's capabilities in there. We also have the report generator, so we can pull the neuropathology report. We can also generate a next of kin letter to say, hey, thank you for donating your son, daughter, father brain. We have the template and we can customize based on the keywords in there. So this is kind of the broad template, but we can always change the wording. And then the last item I wanted to touch on briefly is the clinical trials management system. So we have a fully inbuilt CTMS. It's able to pull these information from ProTrack, which is at the NIH, and it helps with the management of study documents such as regulatory documents, IRB approvals, consent forms, training certificates, and generate reports. So it's fully integrated. We pull, so Protect, again, this is like the tongue twister of the NIH. Protect focuses on IRB information. ProTrack focuses on clinical centers reporting of clinical trials to clinicaltrials.gov. So we pull information from ProTrack through the PQS API into our CTMS system. And this is what we get. You get protocol information, enroll number, accrual ceilings. Is this FDA regulated drug? Yes, no. And we have all this information we pull automatically. Study staff and their roles. We can pull this from ProTrack. And then, scientific review status, we can track that in the CTMS. Any IRB information, we can track that. FDA information, again, a lot of these, if you have a phase 1, 2, 3, or 4 study, if it is 2, 3, 4 years, it generates a lot of documentation. So again, this is a nice way to put it in. The platform is backed up twice a day at noon and at midnight. And again, we track everyone that uses it. So if someone leaves, you're not lost. The system doesn't go away. You don't lose the data. I'm also very fortunate to have some amazing colleagues, Alexandra Bukinski and different teams at CIT. They are working on AI tools, so data integration, large language models, and then we're also working on integrating with our electronic medical records to pull and automatically generate data elements for AI ML analysis also. And as I mentioned, I'm really fortunate. There's a huge team. We work extensively in a very strong collaboration, and it's amazing the things that everyone has done together. So I'd like to say thank you also to our users and our working groups. We have had several working groups for various things to get feedback, and I'll take any questions at this point. Yes, Dr. Zan.
Wonderful review. Thanks so much. My question is regarding the BRICS repository. You just mentioned it very briefly. Is that the repository is publicly accessible, available? Second question is, does the repository something like to have a lot of information about the tissues, about the collection of samples? Those information are connected with any data collected through the system, or you have any further plan for the integration of that repository with some data archive that store the BRICS research data sets?
That's a very good question, Dr. Zan. Thank you for asking that. So the two brain repository groups, the two groups that are using it currently, the brain tissues are not publicly available. One of them is very specific research through NIMH. The other one is the brain trauma repository through the DoD. However, the second point of integration, it is in there. And this is the nice thing about using this platform, because all the modules talk to one another. So if you have any lab or clinical information or pathology report that pulls into the brain repository. But again, those cases are a little rare because you would have to have seen the person while they're still alive prior to donating their brain. But it is available, and you don't have to do the manual like joining. It pulls in because it's integrated in the platform.
And
Doc,
I just want to just add to that a little bit. Because the BRICS platform and any instances are developed here at NIH, we kind of control what needs to be added to the system, and that's based on our stakeholders. So we add that functionality as required because we can make those modifications. And Anu, did you have a question for Dominic?
Yeah, thank you. This is such a great presentation. Very, very interesting modules that you have. I have two questions. One is to do with integration of your clinical trial data collection, I guess, system, and how it connects to EHRs. From what I understood, you have actually implemented it to connect to EHRs, either within NIH or within a federal system. Have you had an opportunity to see how much effort it would take to connect with something like Epic or Cerner? That's the first question for the EHR systems. And also, how easy would it be to have this built out, let's say in a coordination center, and then deployed to the different sites where you actually will have the trials running, right? Because a lot of trials will have multiple sites.
yes, that is an excellent question. And we have done that at a couple of our DoD studies. So we have a multi-site study. A lot of them are, 3, 4 sites. The simplest one is a 2-site study. The tool is an online tool. So any site, as long as you have an internet connection, you can connect. And when we onboard a team, so for example, for our lumbar drain study, we have 4 civilian hospitals. And as people come on and on board, we give them specific access, we train them, and then they're able to consent patients collect data from whatever site they're at. The first question is regarding connections to EMR systems. We have the capability, we have the infrastructure, and it is pretty generic because we can then customize it. So if you have Epic or any other system, as long as the data lives electronically in a database, it's just a matter of mapping it over. So we've done this at NIH. CRIS data goes in Beatrice. We get that in the database and we map out data. So we're doing this currently on the DoD side also. And it's just a matter of really, you have 2 hosts and you're trying to find a way to connect them. You just have to find the right connectors. And in this case, the connectors are the data mapping of the data elements. And that is doable.
I see. I was actually curious about, because most of the EHR databases are, or even data warehouses are behind security firewalls, right? So I just wondered how much effort it would be to actually implement the system behind those firewalls.
Firewalls are more of agreements and exceptions. So if we get, so like, let's say, for example, we have a hospital that's using Epic and we say, hey, we want to have a collaboration with your hospital. We would usually do a sit down with the IT team. They would have a list of compliance questions. So we did this with University of Florida, and we also did this with UT Texas Southwestern. And the IT team sat down and they had a list of questions on, how is the data being accessed? How is it going to be stored? And because we are a government system, we are FISMA rated, we have all that documentation and compliance is already prepared in place, and it was easy compared to, not having any of that. So those conversations usually are pretty straightforward. And then we would always ask for like, hey, we're trying to connect using this particular port. If it's blocked, then, we go to the IT team at the hospital and say, hey, this platform, this URL, this port, it is a known legitimate port. Can you give us an exception to access? And then that's usually how it works. There's not a lot of lift on the infrastructure part. It's mostly the agreement and then the IT work. So That typically takes, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5 months, but it's not like
Okay.
we have to build anything from scratch. Over.
All right, thank you. That's great to know. I have one more question with reference to the biospecimen repository. Did I hear you right that currently the specimen repository is, or at least the data from that is not really available or updated from the data repository?
It's not publicly shared, so it's available in real time and is updated in real time. But for example, NINDS, we have 2 very large repositories, and those are kind of the catch-alls for any investigator at NINDS. If you have a biosample, you want your biosamples stored, analyzed, or processed. So if you pull blood and you want it spun up and separated, but the individual protocols may not necessarily have sharing language for the biospecimens.
Mm.
However, if there is an extramural need for a public repository, that is doable. But the logistics is also having a data access committee, and then how do you share that? That has to be overcome. But from the technology stack, the resources are available. And we're kind of doing this at NIDS also.
So
Sorry.
I'm just going to jump in, Dominic, just really quickly because we only have 1 minute left. I do want to point out we have 2 projects with PDBP as well as FITBR that we provide access to biorepositories, and the data is updated on a nightly basis so that you can query the system, identify aliquots you want to order. You can order those aliquots, get the biosample, and there's a whole we call it a BRAC, a Biosample Repository Access Committee, and workflow that it goes through. So again, it depends on our collaborators and how we manage that. And I just want to take this minute because we're at time. I'm happy to meet with you offline, Anu, and answer.
Yes,
I think you have some
we'll do
additional
that.
questions. But I want to thank Dominic for an
Thank
outstanding
you.
presentation again. Really, all the great work that his team is doing, and we really enjoy our collaboration and support with him. And he's more than happy, I know, to meet with any of you to delve further into any questions that you might have. As always, the recording will be and slides will be available on the BRICS website in the next couple days. And we're already over, so I want to thank everyone and have a great summer. Rest of your summer, and that will be starting up again in September. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.